Magalhaes to Stokes, who's onside. 1-0.
Here's Sims. It's a good serve this from Southampton. They could finish the job here. It's Shane Long, and he has done it. Just a minute to play. That's stoppage time. Here's Letizia. Oh, better to say farewell than one of the finest players ever to wear the red and white.
Hello and welcome. You have finally managed to reach episode 109 of the Saints FC podcast. I mean, 190 would be impressive. Just skipped 81 podcasts for the hell of it. Tom, how are you? You're back. You're here. Not that you went anywhere.
We can't go anywhere.
Well,
no,
you can now have a drink, be it coffee, beer, on a bench with a mate.
Can I do that? I need to get a mate for. Yeah. You can't. So it's sort of like same rule as the exercising rule, but now you can have a drink with. So you don't have to be exercising to meet with someone. Okay, so I could go out this weekend and sit with a mate, and if I drank coffee, I could have a coffee with them.
Yeah, or you could channel your 16-year-old self and get a bottle of cider from the offie. Get a bigger boy to buy one for you and drink that with a mate on a bench.
Like a bottle of 2020 maybe.
Yeah.
Which we used to drink.
Everyone has their own version. Frosty Jack was the one.
Classic.
Yeah.
I know.
We're missing the big event of the night, which our respective wives have gone off to watch, which is the Harry and Meghan Oprah Winfrey interview. Do you feel aggrieved that I've dragged you away from that, Tom, and asked you to talk about Saints instead?
I think when the viewer listening numbers come in, I think a few people are going to be surprised about how we perform compared to that circus. Surely there can't be anything more than been in the papers, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, we were just chatting off air about. Did you ever watch the Oprah Winfrey Lance Armstrong interview? When that, or have you just watched the documentary since?
I've seen bits of it when he does this big confession, doesn't he?
I mean, because I've been into cycling for a little while, and I've actually got a photograph. So Sophie once rescued a Lance Armstrong life-size cutout from a bike shop and gave it to me for my birthday. So I had a birthday breakfast with Lance Armstrong. And obviously there were rumours at the time. But then when he did this Oprah Winfrey confessional, it was just like, boom.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What terrifying man. Married to Sheryl Crow as well.
Yeah, you know what though? Like Lance Armstrong as a manager of a football club, I think would be quite a prospect. Because when you go back to what he did, for like his doping was relentless. The whole organisation of everything, the way he won those Tour de France's, he just left no stone unturned, including all the potential avenues that were cheating as well, but also he left all the avenues of all the other gains that they were there. They were all there to be done. He did the lot. Ruthless. Probably a psychopath.
But also, I think maybe if he's so industrious, it's a bit like when Rupert Lowe brought in Sean Woodward. Yeah, and he thought of all these things.
Clive Woodward, yeah.
Clive Woodward, sorry. Who's Sean? I was a terrible MP there, a Butler. He thought of all those things, didn't he? And he got mocked at the time, and everyone was like, there's no way rugby could work in football. But it's about that kind of, these things work no matter what. Because I think one of the things Sir Clive Woodward did at Southampton was he improved the player's peripheral vision.
Did he? How did he do that?
Well, it's like some sort of exercises where, you strengthen your peripheral vision. Because obviously in rugby, pass sideways, so your peripheral vision is incredibly important. But in football, and obviously Saints, pass sideways a lot. These things mocked at the time. It's like throw-in coaches.
Yeah.
Everyone, Liverpool, Saints throw-ins are terrible. And we get a lot of them.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, Jacob Tanswell did a whole article on how dreadful Saints were at throw-ins, didn't he?
Yes, he did. And like everything Jacob writes, it was informative and very well written.
Yeah. Right, so on that note of informative...
Let's go the opposite.
Let's go. We've got 2 fixtures to talk about this week, Tom. One was the loss to Everton 1-0. One was beating Sheffield United. Woo! A win.
It's a win.
A win is a win. So let's just cover off Everton really quickly, and then we can just spend the rest of the episode enjoying ourselves. And here's one for you to ponder whilst we're talking about Everton and Sheffield United. The Sheffield United game was Ralph's 100th game in charge of Southampton, which seems like a lot to me.
Yeah, we come a lot. I mean, I think in his first proper game in charge was at Cardiff away.
Oh.
We lost 1-0. Vestergaard, terrible. Was it terrible back pass from Vestergaard?
Actually, now you've said that, it does seem like quite a long time ago now, doesn't it? Then
that seems like a long time ago. There's been some highs. There's been couple of lows, but I think on this podcast, I think we're very much a pro Ralph podcast. I think. Yeah,
well, I mean, we should get to that at the end, and we'll give a little bit of a review of where we think we've got to with Ralph. So let's get stuck in with the Everton game. Southampton haven't won at Goodison Park, with the exception of a penalty shootout in a League Cup, for centuries, since Kevin Davis scored a wonder goal.
What year was that?
Was it 97, Tom?
It was 97.
Yeah.
Very good.
There we go. Not just a pretty face, or in fact just, don't have a pretty face, but anyway, there we go. So, I mean, I wasn't feeling particularly confident about this, coming off the back of loads of really bad games. Everton, who are flying high again. It's funny to think that we were sort of up there with the great pretenders until this awful run started. And true to form, Richarlison always scores against us, and he gets his business done early. Yeah,
and I think I was shocked when we lost at Newcastle. One of the things that surprised me was I heard a statistic that Southampton's record against Newcastle, or I think is the worst of any team that we've got in the Premier League, or certainly at Newcastle. And I was amazed. I thought that was Everton, because Everton, we never get anything. And then you saw the lineup, and you saw, Bednarek playing right back, and
Stuart Armstrong in the Romeo position. I mean, that's
position. It just did seem a bit like it wasn't going to go for Saints, didn't it? And I think, then if you think, well, what sort of players do Saints really struggle against? They struggle against really aggressive, big, strong centre forwards, and Everton have got 2 of them.
That's unfair, isn't it?
It is unfair. Well, then we can't handle 1, so to play 2 against us is real horrible stuff. And the game kind of went exactly as you thought it would, didn't it?
Well, sort of yes, and I suppose yes and yes, really. I mean, Richarlison got the early goal. We had all those anxiety-inducing offside trap free kicks. There were about 3 of those in the first half, weren't there?
Yeah.
Which I know is a VAR tactic, and Ralph trying to make the best of what Tom, I've come around to the dark side now. I'm in the Stone Ages. I'm anti-VAR now. I thought it was going to be a good thing, but it's not. But that's one of the areas where Saints use VAR to their advantage, isn't it? Because they know that if there's a fractional offside, it's going to be called offside, so they hold the high line, knowing that the chances are that one of the attackers is going to break that, and then they're going to get punished. But I mean, it's hard to watch, though, isn't it?
Offsides in general are terrifying now, aren't they? With linesmen not calling the game back until the attacking process is finished. It is real anxiety-inducing stuff. And also, McCarthy is never really, I don't think, as good on crosses as he probably is at shot stopping. Forster is like vampire, he bloody hates a cross, and it is a bit hairy. But like touch wood, I'd say this, and it's definitely now we'll concede a goal from it on Wednesday. It does generally seem to work, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've started to get to the point now where if Saints concede a goal from that, I don't get annoyed because I'm expecting the offside to be called by VAR.
Yeah.
But I can see my dad, from his reactions on the WhatsApp chat that we have about Saints fans, he's definitely not got used to it yet.
Yeah, I mean, it is a kind of...
And he has a heart condition, so Saints, I mean, just consider this, okay?
Yeah, I mean, it is because also we leave so much space, don't we, for the players to run into.
Yeah.
It's almost like when sooner or later someone's going to get it right, and when they do, we're going to look very silly. But it saves our bacon quite a lot.
Yeah. I think probably there is, at some point, someone will do a sort of short free kick or something. And yeah, I don't know how they'll work it, but there'll be some way of taking advantage of Saints from that. Well, I mean, we had that. It wasn't like a thrilling match, was it, this game? I think there were 2 shots in target in the entire game. And Saints had some better chances in the second half when we were chasing the game, trying to get the equaliser. But I don't know, Tom, did you ever feel like it was going to come, the equaliser?
It would have been pretty tough on Everton, wouldn't it? If for Saints to have got anything from that game. I think, what's the closest we came? Was it Vestergaard's sort of falling over Bambi on ice shot? And that wasn't until, the 87th minute?
Yeah. I mean, you also had the Gineppo chance. Do you remember this one? Bearing down and goal from the right-hand side. It was after a really nice bit of Saints play, and then he just sort of flashed it wide.
Yeah. We didn't test Pickford, did we, until the 87th minute? We just seemed a bit impotent. Danny Ings looked off the pace, as he has done now, let's be honest, for quite a while. We didn't really look at the races. Almost like we went there, we conceded, and then we were just kind of content to see the game out 1-0, which is a very strange attitude. Yeah, because Everton was 3 on the bounce at home before that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, until about the 80th minute or something, which is when we sort of started apparently trying. It was pretty. It was bad without being dreadful, and there was some promise in there, but probably not enough to get excited about.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't tell you anything new, did it, about Saints?
No.
I mean, Bednarek isn't a right back. We know that. He looked very uncomfortable at right back all night. Even Salisi looked a bit shaky. But then, pound for pound, is that right now the best front 2 in the Premier League? Forwards, Richarlison and... maybe apart from Son and Kane, Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin are probably the 2 best forwards in the Premier League as a strike force. So it's no surprise Saints had an uncomfortable day. And as I say, those sort of big, aggressive, fast forwards are the players that Saints just hate playing against, don't we?
Yeah, yeah. I suppose if we're going to learn one lesson from that is that Armstrong did okay in the middle.
Yeah.
So that's perhaps an option going forward.
Armstrong, I mean, I'd be surprised if he's at Saints next year. He's so good, isn't he? He is so brilliant. I just think one of the bigger clubs are going to look at that and think,
"Oh, Tom, let's not start talking about that." I hadn't considered Armstrong leaving.
He's just so handsome, but he's going to cost you a few quid to get, isn't he? I mean,
he's going to cost you more than 7 million quid, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I think he's I think he's probably player of the season for me.
Yeah, well, I think we might come on to Armstrong quite a lot in the next game. So should we get on to beating Sheffield United 2-0 and enjoying a victory?
That's what we want to talk about.
A rare victory in the Premier League. So first one since that night when everyone else was doing something. This evening is quite similar to that evening. It's a Monday night. We're focused on Saints, and the whole rest of the nation is focused on something else. that night when we beat Liverpool, this was the first Premier League win since then. I mean, obviously we've had some really good FA Cup wins in between, but it does feel like a long time, doesn't it?
Yes, and not only a long time, but we were that Liverpool game. Sorry, we were like 6 points off the top of the table, so everything was so different.
Yeah.
We were contenders, John.
Well, someone shared that sort of, there was a graphic from around about that Liverpool game where it's like the title race, and there's a picture of James Ward-Prowse in amongst, a picture of Salah and Jamie Vardy and Kevin De Bruyne, etc., as part of the title race. And then there was also a graphic from Sky Sports saying the relegation battle, and there we are again. Admittedly, in between those two graphics, we managed to pick up 1 point from an available 27, which is not a great run. It has to be said. But this game against Sheffield United suddenly felt very important because they really are down in the dumps, Sheffield United. And we had a lot of players back, which we knew would be very, very important. So Diallo coming back in, which frees up Armstrong to go back to his normal position. Kyle Walker-Peters coming in at the right back, which is so, so important. And Minamino back in the side as well to add a little bit of attacking flair. I mean, Tom, what did you make of the lineup here?
Yeah, it felt like the boys were back, didn't it? For the first time in about 6 weeks, it felt like we'd actually been able to field a lineup that wasn't far from our strongest. I think Diallo admittedly had a pretty awful, certainly first half against Sheffield United, but he's a really, really talented footballer. We spoke last week or week before about how Saints, in their sort of relentless quest to farm their only reserve fullbacks out to the Championship teams, have made themselves so much worse.
Yeah.
And Kyle Walker-Peters is just such an important, brilliant footballer. And you tweeted that amazing stat, John, about our record with him in the team this season to him without. And is it he's lost one game or something that he's played in or something crazy?
I mean, we've he's lost a few more because he's been involved in a few more than that. But it was something like all of our points in the Premier League have come in games with him in, with 1 point being the exception. So he's had like 7 games where he hasn't had any part in it, and we've got 1 point from those games.
Yeah, he's vital for Saints. Vital. He makes Armstrong better, and Armstrong's possibly our most important player, I think now. The lineup looked positive. I think after the run Saints had you were kind of praying for a team like Sheffield United, weren't you, or like a West Brom to be put in front of them. We needed that. If this game had been Spurs away, then it wouldn't have been pretty. And I think when you saw as well the Sheffield United lineup, they've got none of their first choice centre backs. They've got a completely made up back five. Their forwards, they spent £43 million on Rhian Brewster and Ollie McBurney.
I mean, that's astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah. We don't really talk about other teams, and we shouldn't. But Saints get a lot of stick for their recruitment. But £23 million on Rhian Brewster, and he'd never scored a goal in the Premier League, and he hadn't scored that many in the Championship either. Is kind of bonkers money, isn't it? It's sort of money like Dominic Solanke money that in terms of terrible spending, Bournemouth and Sheffield United are up there. But it looked like the game was there for the taking, but we were still a bit wobbly, weren't we, at the start?
Which I think is understandable, really.
Yeah, I think they're better. They're not a bad Sheffield United are weird because they're not a bad. They don't seem to be a bad team. Like, it was weird to work out. I mean, they're not scoring any goals. I think McBurney and
is that because they spent 43 million quid on Rhian Brewster? And
the funny thing is, they've spent £43 million, but they're really their first two strikers are like a 36-year-old Billy Sharp or 34-year-old Billy Sharp and Dave McGoldrick.
Yeah.
But even players like Fleck, they've got Fleck's a real talented footballer. But it was a bit of a cagey start, which you'd expect.
Tom, can I just go off on a little bit of a David McGoldrick tangent here?
Yes, go for it.
So, I mean, most Saints fans that are old enough will remember David McGoldrick probably for some pretty impressive League Cup performances. What was there? One where he scored a hat-trick against Mansfield or something like that early on, or maybe got a brace. And he looks so different. I've got to admit, I haven't followed his career since he left Saints. But my God, he looks like a totally different human being. He's really, really grown up.
He's pretty hedge.
Yeah.
He's a good footballer. I mean, Chris Wilder said he's the best player that he's ever signed. The best signing he's ever done. I think he looked pretty dangerous against Saints, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, he really did. Well, dangerous, but then also sort of pointing to those problems that Sheffield United have, don't they?
Yeah, which is they're very wasteful in front of goal, and they make really bad decisions when given goal-scoring opportunities. But, I mean, let's talk about the positives for Saints, because we mentioned Diallo coming back. We mentioned Walker-Peters back. You mentioned Minamino, but the real star player wasn't any of those, was he, John?
Well, no. I mean, the star of the show from the off really was Nathan Tella. He was absolutely fantastic, I thought.
He was unplayable.
Well, I mean, apart from the very first time he sort of was heavily in the game was when we had that free kick, which sort of bizarrely Ryan Bertrand took from the left side. Do you remember this?
Yes.
And it fell quite nicely for him, and he just sort of swiped at it and air kicked it. But then everyone had forgotten about that because Danny Ings went off injured a moment later. That was about the last bad thing he did in the game, and then everything else was just brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see Saints. I always like it when someone has a clearly defined tactic to try and win a football match. I think earlier this season, Saints did that really well against Everton at home. You remember where they targeted, was it Ben Godfrey, who was playing right back for Everton, and he's just definitely not right back, and they relentlessly hammered him the entire game. And this was kind of similar with the kind of makeshift defence that Sheffield United had to put out. And Saints had one kind of main tactic, which was get the ball, get Tella running, or just give Tella the ball. You got two players booked in the first 35 minutes. He was fouled about 8 times.
Yeah.
And was just a constant handful. And I think in a minute he was, he looked all right against Leeds, but he looked like he'd really stepped on here because he actually was much more aggressive, and actually took players on and tried to get in behind.
Did you catch up with this stat from Ralph's press conference today? Nathan Tella in 70 minutes ran more than any of the players that played the full 90 minutes in that game.
That is a good stat, John.
I think that's sort of telling of the amount of energy that you put into that match. So, if you're describing this game to someone who hadn't seen it, which I think pretty much everyone probably has seen it, there was so much energy, so much running, directness, pace, good skill from him as well. And actually, if you think about it, that's where our first goal came from, was Tella running at pace towards the Sheffield United goal and Ampadu making an absolutely dreadful tackle from behind. So again, this is another thing about VAR. I told you that I don't get upset when Saints concede a goal from a free kick where I know they're playing the high line. But when Saints get a penalty like this one, again, I sort of don't react because I think, what's VAR going to find wrong with this? But there was nothing for VAR to say that wasn't a penalty because it was so clear.
Well, the referee did delay though, didn't he?
Yeah. He
did delay, and then what was interesting, I was watching it on the NBC stream, which is naughty, I know, but it did look like Ampadu gets a touch, and it's only on the third replay, which was sort of from the corner flag, almost like angle. You can sort of see that Ampadu actually gets nowhere near the ball. But fair play to Tella. Obviously he had that penalty chalked off against Leeds, and I think because he played for that penalty, and this I think he knew he was away, wasn't he? Yeah. And in old money, Ampadu would have been sent off. as well as the penalty. But yeah, he just was relentlessly positive, and I think, you know, a player we've spoken about on the podcast a lot in recent months is Nathan Redmond, and I thought Redmond was dropped. You know, that would have been Redmond, and I thought, you know, the positivity of Tella compared to the kind of timidity of Redmond, who obviously is just completely devoid of confidence, but also great run. But let's not forget brilliant pass from Diallo, probably his only good contribution in the first half, which is this raking ball as he brings the ball out of the area to find Tella. So just a really well-worked goal, because obviously Saints had a tactic, isolate the fullbacks, isolate the centre-backs against Tella, and it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to call you out on that, Tom, for saying that Diallo had a poor first half, which, you know, by some accounts he did, but he was involved in the critical moment with that fantastic through ball.
And he's been out injured, hasn't he, for quite a while, and Sheffield United are big lumps, aren't they, in centre midfield? Yeah. And you imagine probably not easy first game back. But yeah, lovely crossfield pass, lovely run. James Ward-Prowse doing the same technique as he does for his free kicks for his penalty, with a sort of swinging the ball, swinging the foot around the ball type thing. Yeah, what's not to love?
Yeah.
1-0.
And I mean, I think the reaction from the Saints players was quite telling. It was a cheer, but it was a very sort of determined, come on, sort of. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like a woohoo. It was a like, let's do this. We're focused. We're going to win this one sort of reaction, and a sense of like relief and determination, I think, kind of came across in the way the Saints players reacted to this goal going in. And it was, I know it was a huge one for me, Tom, just for tackling the nerves and making me feel like I sort of, I guess Sheffield United haven't really looked that great at any point during this first half. So when that went in, I felt so much better about everything.
Yeah, and I think you imagine this, like professional footballers look at the people that they're playing against, and they must know when they're better. Yeah, you know, they must know when, like, what they need to do, because they're professionals doing a job, and they must have thought, right, if we get a goal, we've got a goal now at a decent time in the first half. Sheffield United are not going to come back from this. You know, we're going to struggle to come back from this. And the more that Sheffield United do try and come back from it, the more space the very pacey Saints forward line can exploit. And yeah, as it was. But we had a bit of a hairy moment, didn't we, before the half time?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's that McGoldrick chance which Forster saves from close range, which is later flagged offside by Sean Maciellis, who we've given some refs and officials some stick recently on podcast, but to show that we are fair and give credit where credit's due, she is always excellent.
Yes, and also not afraid to put her flag up at a reasonable time, rather than, you know, if she believes the decision is right, she puts a flag up,
which she normally does.
Yeah,
she normally gets it right. So
there's 2 close offsides, wasn't there? There was a head. Was there a header as well?
Yeah,
from Sheffield United that was offside, and she got that right.
Yeah, that was another one of our anxiety-inducing free kick high-line routines, wasn't it? And then there was McGoldrick when he tried to sort of Eric Cantona chip it over Forster, but that didn't quite work out for him, did it?
No, and that was Diallo kind of playing a wild. I mean, I was trying to think of another. It was a wild pass, wasn't it? Setting up Brewster, I think. And yeah, if you think, you know, if you're like 4 or 5 foot away from Fraser Forster, probably don't try and chip him. It's probably the lesson there. Like, everyone knows, you know, he's not good at getting down on his feet, so go low. But yeah, you know, we needed a bit of luck. Maybe we need, you know, you need that, didn't you? Because also, if they score that on the stroke of half time from a Saints error, then there's a very decent chance that you're going to see a sort of trademark implosion.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what Carl said, wasn't it, when he joined us a few weeks ago? It's like, that's a goal which you take into the dressing room and changes everything at half time.
Yeah.
So yeah, glad that didn't go in. And then very quickly in the second half, things start to go very well, don't they? We get sort of half chance. Adams is at the back post trying to play it across. And at this point, I think the chance is gone. But Bertrand manages to block the clearance out. I say block. It sort of hits him in the face, doesn't it?
Yeah. But there's a lot to do here, John, still.
I mean, that's the thing. What I think is quite impressive about this is Adams has now moved from the byline to suddenly being on the edge of the area. Armstrong has seen this movement. Is coming back from a position which, I thought he might have been offside, but only having watched replays at the time, I got to enjoy it in all its glory. But he sort of makes it back, chests it down to Che Adams, but makes sure it lands near to his right foot. And that half volley was, a thing of beauty, wasn't it? I mean, what a hit.
Yeah, I think it was good watching Match of the Day on Saturday night, because they had a really... They covered it in quite a lot, talking about it after the game and about how Armstrong's chest down is perfect, isn't it? Like, he's such a good footballer. He's so clever. And he just chests it down perfectly. And then Che Adams, like, who knew that he had that in his locker? And it had that beautiful thing that I think a lot of the best goals have, where it was rising very slowly.
Yeah.
Like a really low, what's the thing?
Trajectory.
Trajectory, that's the one. Rather than going like straight up, it's sort of going at a really steadily increasing trajectory at about, I don't know how fast it was. It looked about 90 miles an hour.
Tom, does this one count for making it into the Thunder Bastard category?
This is a Thunder, a foot like a traction engine.
Traction engine, yes. Sort of Tony, there's a blast from the past. Do you remember him?
So hard. I don't know how hard it was. I think it must have been about 90 miles an hour.
Well, let's go with 90. Che Adams, 90 miles an hour.
Ramsdale's probably quite glad he wasn't in the way of it.
I think if he'd got in the way, he might have just... I don't know if the ball would have slowed down or if it would have just lifted him off his feet and taken him into the back of the net as well.
No, it was brilliant. And his technique, as someone who's a terrible footballer, which is me, his technique to do that, where he cuts across the ball. I mean, who knew the guy had scored in 17 games? You'd have thought that was like De Bruyne, wouldn't you? Or a Fernandes.
I mean, this is the thing with Che. The way he likes to break a run is with something spectacular. So if you go back to his first goal for Saints, it was that brilliant goal against Manchester City.
Yeah, one of my favourites. Stuart Armstrong again with the assist.
Yeah. Maybe, and good on Che, because he had been dropped despite having, I think, a very good season for most of the season. He had been dropped because the goals had dried up. Ings comes off. He obviously wasn't planning on playing as much of a part in this match, but he's come on and he's taken his opportunity, and what a way to do that. Yeah,
and I think obviously it looks like Danny Ings has got some sort of groin injury. I think he's going to be out until after the international break. So Che Adams is now our senior striker.
Yeah.
And what a strike. And, I guess it's all about confidence, isn't it? And he now must feel that he's back and he can score goals again. I think he gets a lot of stick. I mean, Che Adams hasn't been playing well, but no one's been playing well.
No.
No one's been scoring goals. So, yeah, and he's an easy guy to take the mick out of, I think, but it was a brilliant goal.
I'm going to go back to Ralph's press conference from earlier today. Did you hear the analogy he used for Che Adams and his goals?
No, go on.
A bottle of ketchup.
Oh, yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, so that he thinks that Che Adams might be like a bottle of ketchup where, you're hitting the bottle time and time again and then suddenly it all comes out at once. I don't know. It's probably lost in translation a bit. I mean, maybe that's the Austrian equivalent of like a bus, and then you wait for ages, and then 5 sharp at once.
But he had a good run, didn't he, towards the end of last season, where after that Man City goal, he scored a couple against Sheffield United. Was it a couple and one against Bournemouth? There's no reason why. I mean, Man City is one reason why he might not go on a run, but you could see him scoring some more goals, and he's going to have to, isn't he? Really, someone's going to have to step up and score goals in these next few games, and obviously it isn't going to be Danny Ings. Although Danny Ings has got 8 Premier League goals. James Ward-Prowse, what's he on, 6, 7?
Yeah. No, it's interesting, isn't it? I think Danny Ings is probably in danger of not getting a place in the England squad for the the Euros.
Yeah. Well, he's on his third injury of the year, one include Corona. And, Calvert-Lewin looks fit. And let's face it, it's probably down to Calvert-Lewin or Ings, isn't it? It'd be sad for him. But I don't think he's not quite been there, has he, this year?
I think especially since that first injury. I mean, the first half of the season he was great. And then when he got injured against Aston Villa, it's sort of been downhill since then, isn't it? He got that injury, which was a nasty one. Then he had COVID as well, didn't he?
He did have COVID, and like a lot of players, they've struggled since they had COVID. I mean, Stuart Armstrong is now looking better, but even the glorious Stuart Armstrong struggled. So, I mean, who knows what's going on? Is it contract? Is it all these niggling injuries? Is it this type of season? If you're a player like Danny Ings, this doesn't work for you. This type of constant season with very little pre-season. We'll have to wait and see, but we're certainly not going to see him again before the international break.
Yeah, it's a shame as well. I'd have quite liked him to be there for the game against Bournemouth in the FA Cup quarter-final, but there we go. We will have to do without, and hopefully Che Adams can do his bit. Hopefully, Nathan Tella might get a couple of goals in that time. I thought he had one here as well in this game after that really nice run, and he shoots early, doesn't he? Gets sight of goal, fizzing across the ground, but Ramsdale gets down and makes a really good save, actually.
Yeah, it was again, it's shooting early, which is like quite a sort of Stuart Armstrong thing to do, but it was a really good strike. And again, they just couldn't really get near him, could they? He was just too quick. Yeah. He's too smart. And what's reassuring is I think he's done a few long-range shots that have generally been wide. That one was pretty close, so the next one is going to go in.
Yeah. The person who I did think would score a goal would be Minamino if he got a presentable chance. But he put it wide, didn't he, from 12 yards out after a really lovely bit of Saints play and build up.
A rare sort of gut-busting run that we used to see a lot of last season and before that from Ryan Bertrand, which we've not seen that many. It looked easier to score than to miss for Minamino, for a player of his quality. But Saints were just hammering away, weren't they? Sheffield United looked, like a box. When you see a box that's just been hit and they just want to be put out of their misery. Yeah. That's what Sheffield United looked like.
They did. Yeah. And then we had, identical chances really for Adams and for Redmond, didn't we? Where Adams, if he squares it to Armstrong, that's sort of guaranteed as a goal. And that came from a really good through ball from Minamino. And then Redmond gets another good chance shortly after he comes on, and this time from an Armstrong through ball. So, I mean, look at that. There's 4 good chances there after we're already 2-0 up.
I mean, Saints should have won this game 4-0.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the worrying thing, that we don't kill teams. We keep them alive like a cat bringing in a bird. And it's like, we need, you should put teams to the sword. You want to humiliate a team like Sheffield United like that. You want it to be 4-0, you want Redmond to get a goal, you want Adams to get a brace. Then they just make bad decisions. Don't they? Like Adams never looked like he was going to score.
Yeah.
And Redmond doubly so.
And that's 2 goals for Armstrong as well there, isn't it, from that? I think if those two square it.
Yeah. And they just, you worry about the decision-making process at times, but having said that, you could argue that, if you go on like that, which is kind of a form of XG, then there's no way in the world that Che Adams should attempt a half volley from 20 yards out either, because they're not going to go in. So I guess, if you're going to win the raffle, you got to buy a ticket.
Exactly. In terms of talking points for the rest of the game, I mean, there was that horrible challenge on Adams at the end from Fleck, which ended up with a little bit of handbags from the players. Forster also made quite a good block from a low cross. And the reason I bring up Forster is because, that's 5 clean sheets out of 6 games he's played this season.
And then
he conceded 1 goal, and that was against Everton. But he doesn't face many shots, and that I think is what is it that we do differently when Forster's in that means that we don't concede as many chances? Do we just defend better?
Well, he's a changed man, isn't he? He's completely different. Like that bit in the first half when he ran out to head the ball.
Yeah.
He would have done that before for Saints. And fair play to, is it Dave Watson, the goalkeeping coach? They've just completely changed his keeping, like his style completely, and they've turned him into like that libero style defensive goalkeeper. But whether he just organises people better, whether he's getting lucky, I mean, he's going to face some shots on Wednesday night. There's no doubt about that. But
I guess that's the acid test, isn't it?
Yeah, but maybe, I mean, also the fact that he's playing with the right players in front of him. In terms of Vestergaard and Bednarek playing the right positions, and Walker-Peters and Bertrand. I think he looks to now be number one, which is interesting. Does that mean McCarthy comes in for the cup against Bournemouth? Maybe.
Oh, I don't know, Tom. I wouldn't want him to now because I feel like Forster's on a run in the cup.
Yeah. I mean, Forster he looks good. He looks in control. And he looks, I mean, he was a bit flappy against Everton, wasn't he, at times?
Yeah.
But he doesn't like crosses. Yeah.
No. I mean, Forster's not the perfect goalkeeper, but, if he concedes one goal every 6 games for the rest of the season, then so be it. I think we should take that.
I mean, if he does that on a full season, he will concede 6 and 8 goals, which is an incredible clean sheet record.
I mean, can we have that next season? I'd quite like to go through a full season without losing 9-0. Is that possible?
We just lose 6-0 once.
Yeah. I'd probably take that if the other 37 games had clean sheets.
We win the league.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's assuming we're going to score some goals as well. Who knows? So, yeah, we talked about the Kyle Walker-Peters stats. He's such an important player. How has someone who was like a sort of, half chance loan signing, didn't even look like he was ahead of Jan Valery when we brought him in, become such a critical player for Southampton?
Well, I think he seems to have adapted to Ralph ball super quick, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Which obviously is what he wants, but also Saints play the fullbacks. Obviously, we all know are tremendously important, and he urges them to get high up the pitch. But I think one of the good things is with Walker-Peters is his ability to break an opposition press with his skill.
Mm.
Yeah, he can often find his way out of pretty hairy situations when he's got 2 or 3 players going after him. And he sometimes gets it wrong. But that gives Saints the opportunity to break and to use all the Ralph terms, flood the red zone and, double up on defenders. And he just seems to be so important to everything they do. I mean, there's talk of him being rested for Wednesday, isn't there? Just to ensure he keeps fit.
Is that right? Yeah. I mean, I would probably, I don't know. I just want him in there all the time, to be honest. But you wouldn't want to risk him. I guess it depends what sort of injury it is and how much that was aggravated by playing the full 90 minutes against Sheffield United. But I am 100% more confident when we have Kyle Walker-Peters in the starting 11. For all the reasons that you said there, Tom, he's so composed on the ball when the opposition are pressing. He can drop the shoulder. He can do a really sort of decent close quarters pass. He can dribble it around a player. And he gets forward well as well. So, he's got it all. He is the complete modern fullback. And it just doesn't work when we have Stevens or Bednarek or Gineppo in that position. None of them offer the same as Kyle Walker-Peters does.
Well, he's a unique. I mean, I think he's probably him and Armstrong and the two almost like the two most important, with Ward-Prowse probably the most important players for Saints. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because with the Man City game, if we rest him, it sounds like we're going to rest a few players. It's all fun and games resting a load of players, but if we lose 7-0, which Man City can do, then I guess that's why Ralph's played the big bucks, isn't it? Because he now has to try and work out what we do. how do you go to Man City? You're probably not going to win, but you just don't want to get murdered. But you also got to try and give your players some rest ahead of, let's face it, a massive game this coming Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most important game of the season so far, is it?
I think so, because it's the chance to, let's face it, if they don't get tonked by Man City, it matter. As long as they don't lose 4 or 5-0, or even 4-0, as long as it doesn't hit sort of 5 and above, it will be fine. Because as long as they can come back and win on Sunday, because then we do enter into a run of winnable games.
Yeah.
We've had a horrible run of fixtures, and then the runs that remotely were slightly easier, we completely fudged it. So now we get a chance to kind of build some momentum with these games. We aren't going to get anything at Man City, but you could see us getting. We should beat Brighton, surely, shouldn't
we? Yeah, I think we should, and I think if we do, that is a big leap towards Premier League safety, basically.
Yeah, I mean, Brighton are interesting because they don't score many goals, and they concede a lot of goals late in the game.
That is a problem for football teams, isn't it? Conceding a lot and not scoring many. That's fundamentally.
In my book on coaching, it's one of my chapters is score more than you can see.
Score more than the opposition, yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, it's a big game.
Yeah. I mean, we're sort of gazing into the future here. Man City, I'm not expecting much from, even less so if we do end up resting quite a few players. I wonder if some of that might be trying to lull Pep Guardiola into resting some of his. Who knows? They'll only be able to bring on another 11 internationals if they do a full squad rotation.
Did you see their bench on Sunday, by the way? Or was it when they played at the weekend? But yeah, bench, it was insane.
But they did lose. Yeah, what I thought, Tom, was going to happen was that we would lose to Sheffield United and then somehow end Manchester City's run with some sort of jammy 1-1 or 0-0 draw. But yeah, Man City's run is over, so let's hope that they can start a long run of defeats.
If it bleeds, we can kill it. And, Man City, who knows? I mean, who knows? I mean, are they going to be thinking if they lose against Saints, the title race is on? Surely not.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
It must be weird, though, isn't it? Because everything there is Man City's to lose, because anything but a resounding victory is not good enough.
Yeah.
Whereas Saints under pressure.
Right, so let's talk about Ralph Hasenhüttl. He's been with us 100 games now. He took over from Mark Hughes. You reminded us of his first game, which was that dreadful 1-0 loss at Cardiff, which was then followed up by a 3-2 victory at home to Arsenal. Was that with Charlie Austin getting a goal in the last minute?
Charlie Austin there's 2 brilliant Danny Ings headers.
Yeah.
With Matt Targett doing some incredible crossing. And then, there was that great sort of stupid Sunday League goal that Saints scored at the end where Shane Long admittedly floats a delightful ball, doesn't he, to the back post, and Bernd Leno just completely misses it and just sort of hits Charlie Austin in the head and goes in. I mean, that's when Ralph was super passionate, wasn't he? And he was super pumped, and they gave everyone a free beer at the ground. And, you kind of felt that, he was onto something.
It was a little bit of, I mean, he came with this sort of promise of rock and roll football, didn't he? And, I can't remember I remember some of the quotes he had. One of them was that, if you want to guarantee you can buy a washing machine, and so he wasn't going to nail his colours to the mast and say exactly what was going to happen at Saints, but he did promise exciting football. I mean, he promised football that would get the fans out of their seats, which unfortunately there's not been fans for an awful lot of Ralph's reign. But it's been interesting. If I was going to say, Tom, what's your best Ralph memory from the last 100 games?
Can I come back? What would yours be?
I think beating Man City 1-0 last season was really good, but probably more importantly was beating Leicester away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my favourite, I think, isn't like a big game. I think the Newcastle game this year, and the reason why I really enjoyed the Newcastle game, obviously the first one, not the second one, was because I like when the press really works.
Mm.
So you can see that rather than like some incredible goal or amazing bit of sublime skill that wins the game, it's just pure energy and commitment and the drive and the passion and the players wanting it more. And I thought that Newcastle game where we went top, where we just tore them to pieces and they couldn't get out of there in half, I love that because, there will be other games if I think about it more, but I love the way that it kind of exemplifies what he's trying to do.
Yeah, and that's a good point as well. The fact that resulted in us getting top of the table, even if it was just for 48 hours, well, that was an important moment, wasn't it? It was a taste of the possible.
Yeah, and he's in the entertainment business, and Saints, we've had a bad run, but we were entertaining, and I think it does kind of, I do question a lot. You see Saints fans on Twitter, maybe it's just a sort of vocal minority about Ralph's had it, he's got to go. But surely that's madness. I can't think of a manager in a short period of time in the, probably since Strachan, that's, maybe Koeman, but I think Koeman had better players, that's left such an impression on the club.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's certainly been a sort of all or nothing, hasn't it, with Ralph? It's like you're either, you're in. That's it. It's like if you're, he's all encompassing, isn't he? Like there is one way to play football under Ralph. It's plan A or plan A harder, which is, maybe one of the advantages, but maybe one of the faults of Ralph as well. But if we go back, like who are we going to have instead of Ralph Hasenhüttl? Kelvin Davis was caretaker manager for a match. I don't think we'll see him step up to be a long-term manager. We had Mark Hughes before then. That didn't work out well. Win percentage of 18% is what Mark Hughes had.
God, that's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah. 27 games, we won 5.
And we still weren't relegated. Jesus,
yeah.
Wonderful.
Pellegrino, God, that was dreadful.
That was bad times.
Claude Puel, which so his win ratio 37.7%. League Cup final, finished 8th in the league, but it was sort of a slightly inflated position, wasn't it? I think under Claude Puel, because it was close, wasn't it?
It was close, but this is the thing, isn't it? People say, well, that sort of thing there, it's an inflated position. It's sort of like when people say, well, they're too good to go down. You're not. You are exactly where you belong to. You are generally where you are meant to be, aren't you? And that's the 8-game season. And Puel, we were at Wembley. That was a great day out. But he just got a lot of stick. Not that day, but just in general. And I think if we'd have, I know the benefit of hindsight, of course, but obviously the horror a couple of years after that, I think most Saints fans would have loved to have kept Puel. No, if they'd have known what was coming down the track in terms of the two, probably our most inept managers since what's that? Portveld? Mark Watt?
Portveld.
Yeah. So Ralph is, he's going to have his critics, but I think this is the nature of his style, isn't it? It's not divisive. It certainly it provokes opinions. What say anything about Hughes or Pellegrino? Like, can you remember anything positive about that time? I genuinely can't. Saints were under Pellegrino; they were awful.
Yeah. No, the only thing that I could say good about Pellegrino is that during that time I was invited to play against him at Staplewood, which was a fun day. But He was a bizarre guy to interview. I've got to say that. I mean, if we go back, like, let's have a look. Ralph's win percentage after 100 games, which is obviously a very easy time for me to figure out a win percentage, is 38%. So 38 games won at present. The last two managers that have had win percentages like that, so Claude Puel, 37.7, and Pochettino, 38.3. So Puel and Pochettino actually had pretty similar win ratios. And I don't think anyone looks back at the Pochettino era and thinks, God, that was a dreadful time.
So he's got virtually the same, well, identically the same rate, apart from a sort of rounding error, the same ratio as Pochettino.
Yeah, and Puel.
And Puel. And what are we looking at with Big Ronald here?
48%. I mean, he is leagues above, really, isn't he, in win ratio?
Yeah, and that's the difference. I mean, that's like having a Van. I mean, the players we've got, the players we had. I mean, Van Dijk and Mane, two of probably the best 11 players on the planet, and we had them at the same time.
I mean, we also had Shane Long in peak Shane Long under Koeman, didn't we?
And Pella, who was unplayable.
Bitch.
There's Fonte. Had some really good players. It was. I'm a big fan of, as you know, and I think you are. I'm a huge fan of Ralph, and I think it's easy to call someone's head, but think about who you're going to get. Like your point. I mean, there's no one out there that you'd want.
No, I mean, if any listeners do have a suggestion for who you would replace Ralph with, saintsfcpodcast@gmail.com, perhaps we'll have a look at them. I think on the balance of everything, it's easier to say this after we've had a win. If we'd lost against Sheffield United, perhaps we'd be thinking, where is this going to go? But I think at this point, if we can progress into the semi-final of the FA Cup, if we can beat Brighton, then I think you're going to be looking at another year in the Premier League, a semi-final of the Cup, hopefully a final, and who knows what would happen after that. I think that's acceptable, isn't it, for a Saints manager? I mean, with the squad that we've got?
Yeah, I mean, this is an exceptional season as well. And this is a season which doesn't really play to Saints' strengths, because Saints seem to expend a lot of energy. The style of that Saints play is they expend a lot of energy, and now we're sort of seeing a lot of injuries as a result of that. Not just the sort of soft tissue injuries, but just Saints players are getting injured more than the average team. If you said to Saints fans at the start of the season, you're going to finish 10th, which is not implausible. We're 2 points off 11th at the moment. And Leeds are currently losing. You can finish 10th and you're going to be in the FA Cup. Say if we beat Bournemouth, which we should do, you'll be in the FA Cup semi-final. And at that point, anything can happen. Anything can happen. And, say if we do get through to the FA Cup final, then that's a great day.
Yeah, I mean, that would be amazing. I just sort of wish we could be there for it.
Well, they're talking about getting 10,000 fans in, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, well, once you've given the FA cronies their tickets, how many Saints fans does that leave?
A couple of thousand, maybe, if that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's sad. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to sort of somehow pass ourselves off as professional journalists, Tom, and see if we can get in as press.
Yeah, could you get your employer or my employer to sponsor the FA Cup?
No, I don't think so. So, I mean, it's not been a fantastic year for business, really, has it? I mean...
No, it's not. But look, if we get there, we'll watch it on a big telly somewhere.
Yeah. A massive fan park with 100,000 of us squashed in outside Wembley. Or that pub.
Oh. Yeah, that pub at Wembley. Yeah, that weird pub. Yeah. Well, we've got to get there first. We've got 2 games to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
First.
Right, well, Tom, I mean, I think we've sort of hit the hour now. We've reached 100 games with Ralph. We've won a game, finally. We've got a very, very tough game coming up against Man City, and then a very, very exciting game coming up against Bournemouth in the FA Cup quarter final, followed by a much more, I don't know, easier, friendlier looking run in the Premier League. So hopefully things are looking up.
I think so, John. Despite the best efforts of the footballing gods who hit us with injuries and weird things, I think things are looking up.
Okay. And, maybe it's all down to Kyle Walker-Peters. Maybe it's just down to having players in the right positions. Who knows? Hopefully all will be revealed in the next few games. Thank you very much, listeners, for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Tom, for joining me this evening to talk about Saints and to avoid the royal interviews. So do let us know what you think. saintsfcpodcast at gmail.com or at saintsfcpodcast on Twitter. Thank you, and we'll catch up after a couple more games.